Okay.
The close wasn't as affected by Reformation and Restoration processes as many other places were, especially since this was a secular cathedral rather than a monastic cathedral. The organization of the close was altered a little bit, and the clergy obviously was reduced. 6 prebends were lost. The number of residentiaries only fell from about 7 or 8 at any given time to about 6 or 7 at any given time, which is actually how it stayed until the Cathedral Act of 1840. As far as like treasures of the cathedral goes, anything that was described in the inventory in 1536 was confiscated from the cathedral. There's also a shrine of St. Osmond that was reportedly destroyed. In 1547 and 1548, throughout those 2 years, the chantries completely dissolved and chantry priests disappeared from the cathedral. The vicar's choral went from about 20 in 1552 to 7 in 1568. With all this clergy leaving the close, this meant that there were empty buildings in the close, so those buildings were leased out to other tenants like businessmen and laity. Families were also introduced to the close because now the clergy could marry. So when before families weren't a normal thing in the close, families became kind of established in the close. A couple different specific examples of what happened in the close is close number 48, which is the Porter's Lodge. The close was walled in completely in 1327, which meant that the building for the Porter's Lodge was there, but it actually being a Porter's Lodge wasn't first documented until 1530. So whether it lodged, a porter or not, is unknown. This was also next to the prison at the time. In 1530, it was recorded that. Number 50, 50A, and 51 in the close were leased to tenants during this time, like I said before, to businessmen. This included specifically merchants, a goldsmith, and a joiner. Number 56 in the close was a schoolroom for cathedral choristers all the way from 1559 to 1947. The wardrobe, number 58 in the close, is one of the oldest buildings, and it was a canonry previously and became a household for the bishop in 1543. The medieval house, shown here, transformed substantially during this time. This is one of the biggest transformations during the Reformation. The hall, buttery, cellar, great parlor, study, gallery, kitchen, chapel, great chamber, and other chambers were all established differently from how they were established previously. One thing that several properties started doing during the Reformation and the Restoration, including the old deanery, which is where they obviously housed the dean, in a 1586 census, which is sometime past the Reformation and Restoration, but it was the latest census, or the most recent census to that time. Chambers in houses were changed to being called the King's Chamber, which is probably due to tutor visitations. When the tutors would visit the places, obviously they'd be, checking and seeing if that they approved, and if a place called something like the King's Chamber or the King's House, they're more likely to approve of it. Not much is known about the old deanery previously to that because of the sparse, the old deanery's specifications. Other than that, because of how sparse the notes were in the census of the old deanery. Um, the something else that happened in a lot of the houses of the close is that there were these great halls that I believe Sarah talked about in many of these houses, but these were remodeled into different chambers, and the ceilings were also raised during this time. So basically, the close and its buildings saw few physical transformations during the Reformation and Tudor age. Mostly what changed was the occupants and the number of occupants, obviously, since the clergy was reduced. And businessmen became introduced into the close. That was Shannon and Sarah's presentation on Salisbury, the close, and the houses of the close.